is as good as giving them dual nationality. Because
Midday Prime, and our top focus today is going to be the big takeaways from the third 2+2 ministerial dialogue between India and the United States and the string of high-level meetings that have taken place between India and the US today. But first up, the big news at this hour. Basic exchange and cooperation agreement completed between India and the US in 2+2 strategic dialogue. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh says BECA will open new avenues in the information sharing domain between the two countries. Supreme Court orders Alabad High Court to monitor the CBI probe into Hartress alleged gang rape case. The Apex Court said all aspects of Hartress case, including security to the victim's family and witnesses, will be looked into by the Alabad High Court. Says issue of transfer of Hartress case to Delhi will be decided later. Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacts with the beneficiaries of PM Swanidhi scheme hailing from Uttar Pradesh. Says a Swanidhi scheme underscores the government's policy of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. PM also to inaugurate National Anti-Corruption Conference Satark Bharat Samriddh Bharat via video link later in the day. Voters to cast votes for 71 assembly constituencies in Bihar tomorrow. Rural Patna, Jamui, Gaya, Lakhusarai are the key districts going to polls. Election Commission makes elaborate arrangements for free, fair and safe election during COVID times. US presidential election candidates on a campaigning blitz as the D-Day comes closer. Running mates swoop down on battleground states to drum up crucial support. Early voting breaks record as more than 60 million Americans have already cast their ballots. Judge Amy Barrett is sworn in as Supreme Court Justice. And in cricket, Selection Committee of BCCI selects Indian cricket team for upcoming tour of Australia. KL Rahul will be the vice captain as Rohit Sharma has been dropped due to injury. Mohammad Siraz and Varun Chakravarti will be the new faces for the series. And let's begin with the big story that we're tracking at this hour. The third India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue began in New Delhi this morning. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar are leading the Indian delegations, while the US delegation is being led by US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. Agenda for the third dialogue covers all bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. Both the sides have also signed the last foundational agreement, which is a basic exchange and cooperation agreement for geospatial cooperation. Speaking on the agreement, Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh said that BECA will open new avenues in information sharing.
Geospatial information तथा एप्लीकेशंस की विस्तृत संभावनाओं के बारे में खुल जाएंगे। यह सभी तथा अन्य अचीवमेंट खुद में ही काफी महत्वपूर्ण है। हम चर्चा करने के लिए उत्सुक हैं।
US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that today is a great opportunity for two great democracies to grow closer and that there is a lot to discuss today to cooperate amid the pandemic, to confront Chinese Communist Party's threats to security and freedom, to promote peace and stability in the region.
To confronting the Chinese Communist Party threats to security and freedom, to promoting peace and stability throughout the region. Together, our two countries are building a better future for our people based on our shared set of values and our cultures, our defense ties, our scientific collaboration and mutual prosperity. Thank you for your leadership to each of you to build what ought to be a defining partnership of democracies in the 21st century.
Let's now go across to Hyderabad House, where press statements are going to take place now after the conclusion of the third edition of the India-US Strategic 2+2 Dialogue. It's a ministerial dialogue between India and the United States. This comes just days ahead of US presidential elections slated to take place on the 3rd of November. The focus was on the Foundational Military Pact (BECA), which is the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Intelligence Sharing between India and the United States of America. The third after LEMOA and COMCASA was signed. This is going to be extremely significant as far as strategic and defense cooperation between India and the United States is concerned. Besides that, the other focus area would be security and stability of the Indo-Pacific region.
I welcome you to this media event following the third India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue. I will begin by announcing the documents which have been concluded between the two sides. First, the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement between the Ministry of Defense, Government of India, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, Department of Defense of the United States of America. Second, the MOU for technical cooperation in Earth observations and Earth sciences between the Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States of America. Third, the arrangement extending the duration of the MOU between the Government of India and the Government of the United States of America concerning cooperation with the Global Center for Nuclear Energy Partnership in India. Fourth, the agreement for the electronic exchange of customs data between the postal operators, that is India Post and the United States Postal Services. And fifth, the letter of intent between the Central Council for Research in Ayurvedic Sciences, New Delhi, of the Ministry of Ayush, Government of India, and the Office of Cancer, Complementary and Alternative Medicine, National Cancer Institute, National Institutes of Health, Department of Health and Human Services of the USA for cooperation in the field of Ayurveda and cancer research. Now moving on to the press statements by the distinguished dignitaries, may I now request Honorable Raksha Mantri, Shri Rajnath Singh, to deliver his remarks.
Okay. Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Esper, my esteemed colleague Dr. Jaishankar, members of press, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the secretaries, their delegations, and all members of US media who have traveled to India to meet us amidst the threat of COVID-19 pandemic. I deeply appreciate your commitment to our bilateral relations. During the meeting today, we have had comprehensive discussions on key aspects of our bilateral and multilateral cooperation. We considered the major challenges we face, the need for quick economic recovery and growth, prevention of the pandemic rebuild, the global supply chains and related issues received obvious priority in our discussions. I met Dr. Esper yesterday to discuss bilateral defense issues. We continued our discussions on larger regional and global perspective today over the 2+2. Signing the BECA today, after signing the LEMOA in 2016 and COMCASA in 2018, is a significant achievement in that direction. I would also like to highlight some of the other noteworthy steps taken by both India and the US in follow-up to our earlier discussions. These include positioning of US Navy liaison officer and Indian Fusion Center, Indian Ocean Region, and Indian liaison officer at Navicent, Bahrain, greater interaction and coordination with CENTCOM and AFRICOM, setting up of the COMSEC account and increasing the scope and complexities of our exercises. Now, liaison officers at each other's establishment could be leveraged to enhance our information sharing architecture. To sum it up, our military-to-military cooperation is progressing very well. In today's meeting, we also explored probable capacity building and other joint cooperation activities in third countries, including our neighborhood and beyond. We have convergence of views on a number of such proposals and will take those forward. I welcome the acceptance of our requests for cooperation in the advanced field of maritime domain awareness. Both sides agreed to comprehend the requirements and initiate processes for joint development of requisite systems and expertise. In the defense industrial cooperation area, we had a very candid and useful discussion. Recent initiative of Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense sector was underlined as a key driver and a guiding factor of our defense industrial cooperation. I highlighted the capabilities of Indian defense industry and their usefulness in the supply chain of major US platforms and systems. We have identified priority near-term projects for joint development between respective agencies which need to be fast-tracked under the Defense Trade and Technology Initiative and resolved to work together in defense research and development more efficiently. Defense innovation field was being growing consistently in our discussions in recent years. The instruments of Industrial Security Annex, DIU, MOI, which were agreed upon the signed during our last 2+2 meetings, are beginning to bear fruit. We welcomed the holding of the inaugural meeting of IDEX DIU in July 2020 through video conferencing and are looking forward to the first ISA summit this year. In our meeting, we shared assessment of the security situation across the Indo-Pacific. In that process, we reaffirmed our commitment to peace, stability, and prosperity of all countries in the region. We also agreed that upholding the rules-based international order, respecting the rule of law and freedom of navigation in the international seas, and upholding the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of all states are essential. Our defense cooperation is intended to further these objectives. Both sides welcomed Australia joining the forthcoming Malabar exercise. We appreciate the visit of Secretary Pompeo and Secretary Esper to India. We had a very constructive dialogue and will continue to work together to strengthen our engagement in defense, security, and other areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now call upon the Honorable Mark Esper, Secretary of Defense, for his remarks.
Minister Singh, Minister Jaishankar, Secretary Pompeo, it is great to be here in New Delhi and for the four of us to meet and to discuss the important issues of the day and indeed the important issues of the future. As the world confronts a global pandemic and growing security challenges, the United States-India partnership is more important than ever to ensure security, stability, and prosperity of the region and the world. 15 years after the conclusion of the first U.S.-India defense framework, the defense ties between our two nations remain a key pillar of our overall bilateral relationship. Based on our shared values and common interests, we stand shoulder to shoulder in support of a free and open Indo-Pacific for all, particularly in light of increasing aggression and destabilizing activities by China. I am pleased to report that today we made substantial progress in further strengthening our relationship, building upon last year's successful 2+2 ministerial in Washington and the many discussions Defense Minister Singh and I have had these past several months. During our meetings these last 2 days, we reaffirmed the United States' commitment to a comprehensive and forward-looking defense partnership with India and discussed opportunities to expand our regional security cooperation, military-to-military interactions, and defense trade relationship. This includes increasing bilateral defense cooperation in the Indian Ocean region, Southeast Asia, and the broader Indo-Pacific. Recently, this cooperation was demonstrated by the combined exercise between the Indian Navy and the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group in July. In addition, we have exchanged military liaisons with India to strengthen coordination between our military staffs, and we are working to establish new cyber and space dialogues to increase cooperation in domains where both our countries face emerging threats. We also discussed engagement with like-minded partners such as Japan and Australia to advance maritime security, humanitarian aid, disaster relief, and other common interests across the region. India's recent decision to include Australia in the upcoming Malabar naval exercise alongside American, Indian, and Japanese forces reflects an acknowledgement of the importance of working multilaterally together to address global challenges. Defense information sharing, both at the service and joint service level, is another area in which we are making significant progress. It is important to note that we achieved a significant milestone today with the signing of the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, the last of the foundational defense agreements between our countries, which enables greater geospatial information sharing between our armed forces. We also reached agreement to expand secure communications capabilities between our militaries and among defense leadership. Finally, our defense trade and technology cooperation continues to grow, as reflected in India's acquisition of Apache and Seahawk helicopters earlier this year. We look forward to advancing sales for other key defense platforms, including fighter aircraft and unmanned aerial systems. Despite today's challenging security environment, the partnership between the United States and India, the world's two largest democracies, remains resilient, strong, and growing. I want to thank my Indian counterparts for their hospitality and leadership as we continue to work to deepen our cooperation, advance our shared interests and values, and defend international rules and norms. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I call upon the Honorable Michael Pompeo, Secretary of State, to make his remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Minister Jaishankar, Mr. Singh, thank you for hosting Secretary Esper and I. Minister Jaishankar, it's great to see you again after having been with you so recently in Tokyo with our Quad partners earlier this month. Big things are happening as our democracies align to better protect the citizens of our two countries and indeed of the free world. And it's an honor to visit this great nation. It's my third trip here as America's Secretary of State. When I was here last year, I urged two countries to embark on a new age of ambition in our relationship, and I think we've absolutely done that, and that the conversations that we held today reflected welcome progress towards that goal. Thanks to Prime Minister Modi and President Trump's leadership and our shared values, our ties are growing stronger day by day. This morning, we visited the National War Memorial to honor the brave men and women of the Indian Armed Forces who have sacrificed for the world's largest democracy, including 20 that were killed by the PLA forces in the Galwan Valley in June. The United States will stand with the people of India as they confront threats to their sovereignty and to their liberty. As to our discussion these 2 days, look, our joint efforts to fight the pandemic, which we talked about at great length, are a strong signal that our nations are committed to working together and expanding our partnership across many fronts. U.S. health agencies are working closely with government partners of India on the COVID-19 response. Indian companies, too, are cooperating with Gilead to manufacture remdesivir for use by low and middle-income countries all around the world. And several Indian and U.S. companies are working together to test and manufacture potential vaccine candidates. Further, I'm proud to announce today new agreements between the United States Department of Health and Human Services and the Indian Ministry on Health and Family Welfare to enhance health cooperation. It could not come at a better time. The challenge of defeating the pandemic that came from Wuhan also fed into our robust discussions about the Chinese Communist Party. Our leaders and our citizens see with increasing clarity that the CCP is no friend to democracy, the rule of law, transparency, nor to freedom of navigation, the foundation of a free and open
and prosperous Indo-Pacific. I'm glad to say that the United States and India are taking steps to strengthen our cooperation against all manner of threats, and not just those posed by the Chinese Communist Party. In the past year, we've expanded our cooperation on cyber issues. Our navies have held joint exercises in the Indian Ocean. I note, too, happily, that Australia is joining Malabar in 2020 naval exercise. I'm also confident that our two nations will work together in new and better ways to meet the region's infrastructure needs. Already, the United States has joined the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, launched by Prime Minister Modi, and we strongly support the Blue Dot Network. The United States Development Finance Corporation has established a liaison here, posting right in India. It's great progress that will set the stage for more good economic work together. Lastly, we, the United States, values India as a multilateral partner, whether it's through the Quad, through new cooperation on Mekong regional issues, making Afghan peace negotiations successful, or working together during India's upcoming term on the United Nations Security Council. We continue to support India's permanent membership of that body. May the United States keep leading together, along with India, on the issues of our time, and may God bless America and India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And may I now invite Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, for his remarks to the media.
Raksha Mantri ji, Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Esper, friends of the media. As you have heard from my colleagues, we have just concluded the third India-US 2+2 dialogue. This format is reflective of our comprehensive global strategic partnership. Before our meeting today, I met Secretary Pompeo yesterday to discuss a range of foreign policy issues. These have been two very productive days, and I thank our counterparts for making that happen, for taking the effort to come here physically. If I may say so myself, the performance of our relationship in the last few years has been exceptionally positive. Political consultations and cooperation have grown, defense exchanges and trade too, economic interactions and commerce are up, the partnership in science, technology and innovation is stronger, and our energy security clearly enhanced. Not least, the unique people-to-people contacts that defines this relationship remains vibrant, whether in the flow of talent, in education, or in tourism. We discussed our experiences in responding to the COVID-19 challenge at some length. The facilitation of travel, even during the pandemic, was very commendable. Today, our collaboration concentrates more on the domains of vaccine and testing that are so central to the return of normalcy. We are also committed to creating more trusted and resilient global supply chains. And India, that is now focused on recovery, resilience, and reform, welcomes an expanded partnership with the United States. The 2+2 dialogue has a Paul Mill agenda that underlines our close bilateral relationship. Our national security convergences have obviously grown in a more multipolar world. We meet today to not only advance our own interests, but to ensure that our bilateral cooperation makes a positive contribution in the world arena. We are also committed to addressing together global issues ranging from HADR situations to maritime security and counterterrorism. As you have heard from my colleagues, the Indo-Pacific region was a particular focus of our talks. We reiterated the importance of peace, stability, and prosperity for all countries in this region. As Raksha Mantri stated, this is possible only by upholding the rules-based international order, ensuring the freedom of navigation in international seas, promoting open connectivity, and respecting the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all states. A multipolar world must have a multipolar Asia as its basis. Discussions also covered developments in our neighboring countries, We made clear that cross-border terrorism is completely unacceptable. On Afghanistan, India's stakes in its security and stability are evident, as is our willingness to contribute to international efforts to that end. India enters the UN Security Council on the 1st of January 2021 as a non-permanent member. We look forward to working with the United States there as in other multilateral platforms. In conclusion, I thank Secretaries Pompeo and Esper once again for a very useful and very fruitful 2+2 dialogue.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now moving on to questions for the dignitaries. Given the time constraints, we will take 2 questions from the Indian media pool, following which Principal Deputy Spokesperson from the Department of State, Mr. Cale Brown, will invite 2 questions from the US media pool. From the Indian media, the first question is from Siddhant Sibbal from WION, followed by Manas from PTI. Siddhant, you may like to go ahead.
My question is to EM. So we have seen a spate of engagement between United States and India, the Quad meeting, the visit by the Deputy Secretary to New Delhi, and then of course this high-level 2+2 meeting. The entire engagement coming just before the US election. Any specific reason or timing? And is the China factor reason behind these engagements?
Well, I think as for the timing, the previous 2 rounds of the 2+2 dialogue were also held around the same time in October, November. As for what is the factor for holding it, there isn't one factor, there are 2 factors. One is called India, the other is called the United States of America. If you look at the growth of this relationship, as I pointed out in virtually every domain, it's actually been very, very remarkable over the last 20 years, but I would say especially the last few years. This is a relationship that serves our national interest well, as it does that of the United States. But what is equally important is that the Indo-US collaboration can be a force of good. So in that sense, it is truly global, it is truly comprehensive, it is truly strategic, and that's the reason why we are meeting.
Thank you, sir. Manas from PTI.
Good afternoon, Raksha Mantriji. So the talks have taken place at a very, very crucial time when India is facing security challenges along its northern and western borders. And India has been focusing on enhancing its internal defense capabilities by building military platforms within the country. So how far these talks today have helped India in consolidating ties with the US in terms of co-development of joint military platforms as well as weapon systems? We have signed 4 very, very significant agreements, including BECA today. So how it will enhance the overall defense cooperation between India and the US? Thank you so much.
You are right. We aspire to go beyond the buyer-seller approach to genuine partnership with the US in the defense and related industry. This is precisely why we have liberalized our defense sector for direct foreign investment and undertaking enabling measures to enhance ease of doing business. And we conveyed the secretaries that creation of a robust ecosystem of defense industry in India through partnership and investment is the fundamental goal of the Atma Nirbhar Bharat vision of Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi. In a broader context, India offers opportunities for shifting production and the global supply chains in the wake of disruptions due to the pandemic. We invited original equipment manufacturers, other companies from USA, to invest in India, taking advantage of 74% FDI ceiling in the defense industry under automatic route, or even larger equity share through government approval. India has very substantial requirements which can sustain such investments over years. We explained how the reforms in our acquisition policy further enhanced incentives for investment in Indian defense industry. We pointed out that to Asia and elsewhere, goods and service exports from India could be a rewarding option. We spoke of the advantage of developing maintenance, repairs, and overhaul facilities in India for the entire region for US origin equipment. The visit of Secretaries has been a wonderful opportunity to elaborate on the initiatives of self-reliant India. We hope both the Secretaries appreciate our policies and they will carry our message back to their government and the industry of USA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now may I request Mr. Cale Brown to invite questions from the US media. Over to you, Cale.
And I'll turn to our U.S. colleagues for one question per, and I'll ask you to identify to whom you're directing your question. Let's start with Paul Hanley from AFP.
Hi. For Minister Singh, could you tell us where this relationship is going in the defense relationship? Are you planning to buy more weapons from the U.S., like F-18 jets for your Navy? And would you be distancing yourself from Russian suppliers, including for the S-400? And a question for Dr. Esper.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, are we on a collision course with China? Are we on a crash course with China, with Taiwan and India building our relations?
One question, please. What's that?
तक वेपन का सवाल है, इस संबंध में कहना चाहता हूं कि जिसके साथ भी हथियार सेल करने होते हैं तो बाय करने होते हैं, उनके साथ नेगोशिएशंस होते हैं और नेगोशिएशंस के आधार पर ये डिसीजन होते हैं। किसके साथ लेंगे, किसके साथ नहीं लेंगे, ये निर्भर करता है वो हमारे नेगोशिएशन के ऊपर।
Great. For our next question, can we go to Will Malden with the Wall Street Journal?
Thanks so much for having this, and Secretary Pompeo, if I could ask you, other than the major defense pact that was signed on the geospatial cooperation, what other measures did you speak about with your Indian counterparts that would help with ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific and potentially confronting a more aggressive China? Since it is a pandemic, I also wanted to ask about the coronavirus.
Well, one question.
Foreign Minister Jaishankar.
One question, please.
Do you approve of the U.S. Withdrawal from
Mr.
the WHO
Malden,
and other
one question.
Since it's a pandemic emergency and we have two democracies here asking questions of our representatives. Thank you.
So, Will, in addition to the number of agreements, I think you suggested there were two. There were a number of agreements that were signed. The work that we have done together over the course of these 2 days builds on a lot of work that State Department and the Department of Defense have been doing over the past weeks and months to prepare for this very time. So you can see whether it's work that we're doing on a bilateral basis to put our economic relationships in a better place, if it's work that you can see us doing to ensure that we have a depth of understanding about who has capabilities in certain parts of the world where we can diplomatically make 1 + 1 more than that, working alongside each other. And I'm leaving here, I'm traveling to Sri Lanka, I'm traveling to the Maldives, on to Indonesia. Understanding the interest that India has in those places, I can go and travel and help us collectively build out, based on our partnership and our friendship and the warm commitment between our two leaders, we can do good things for the entire region and do them together and cover down on places each of us could not do individually. So there were many good things that flowed from the course of the conversations over these 2 days, and I'm confident that you'll see in the days ahead many more good things that will occur because of the conversations we've been able to have face-to-face here over these last days.
Thank you, sir. This concludes this media event, and I thank you all for joining.
So that was the press statement that you heard from the US side as well as from the Indian side after the conclusion of the third edition of the India-US 2+2 Ministerial Dialogue. And there were quite a few convergences. For instance, the Indo-Pacific region and the concern around the safety, security, stability of the Indo-Pacific region was a common point that was reinforced by India and the United States in that press statement. Mark Esper even going to the extent of talking about the destabilizing activities of the Chinese Communist Party in the Indo-Pacific region. And both Rajnath Singh as well as External Affairs Minister Jaishankar did speak about the need for a rules-based global order when it comes to the Indo-Pacific region. In fact, our expert is joining us now for his views on this. Harshvardhan Pant, a distinguished fellow ORF Strategic Affairs Analyst, is with us. Dr. Pant, what do you make of what was said, particularly in the context of Indo-Pacific region? I'll come to BECA and the importance of this foundational agreement in just a bit. But first up, what was said by both sides on the need to ensure safety and security, freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific region as a whole?
Well, the argument was made by both sides that you need stability in the region. Indo-Pacific is increasingly becoming very contentious because of one particular country, which was named by the American officials. And India used different words, but the sentiment was clear that both countries are on the same page when it comes to establishing peace, stability, and freedom in the region, and how these two countries stand side by side to shoulder some of those burdens that would come inevitably with managing China's rise in this vast maritime space. So I think it was heartening to see that the kind of convergence that we see today on both sides is quite extraordinary. We have not had this sort of convergence ever before on such meta issues of global governance and global strategy.
Absolutely. Hold your thoughts. We'll come back to you, Dr. Pant. But before that, there's a meeting that has taken place, and we'll tell you more about that after holding the important 2+2 dialogue with the Indian counterparts. The visiting US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Secretary of Defense Mark Esper met Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Arun Sharma, correspondent, joins us for more on this. Arun, a meeting taking place at the highest level here. Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting Mark Esper as well as Mike Pompeo. Would you say that what we heard during the press statement after the 2+2 dialogue would be similar issues would have been reinforced during this meeting as well, the focus on Indo-Pacific and the need to bolster further strategic and defense cooperation between the two sides?
Well, there are larger issues when we talk about this meeting with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We know this fact that world's largest democracies and oldest democracies are growing ahead as far as these relationships are concerned. And as in the press briefing, it was mentioned by the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and, of course, the External Affairs Minister, that Atmanirbhar Bharat is something that's key, and that's a driving force as far as defense sector is concerned. Well, India, as of now, is looking forward to move ahead and move from a buyer-seller kind of relationship, and they want to take this relationship much more higher. And we have seen this fact that Prime Minister Narendra Modi on various global platforms as well has been reiterating this fact that India has been a lucrative market, in various other sectors, and defense, of course, is an important in that aspect. So when today, Mr. Mike Pompeo, and of course Mr. Mark Esper, they met Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The meeting was on very larger perspective. Other than the regional issues, more global issues were also discussed. Issues related to Indo-Pacific region, and of course Indo-Pacific was also discussed. How can strategic relationship be given a major push? So all these primary issues were discussed primarily when the meeting took place between these leaders. But important aspect is that how can India be projected as a big market globally as well. And when US and India relationship is going ahead in that direction, the meeting is of great significance. And as Mr. Rajnath Singh did the press conference of the 2+2 press statements, and EAM Dr. Jaishankar clearly mentioned this point that yes, discussed ranging from COVID-19 situation to various other issues of multilateral and, of course, the bilateral relationship. All these were discussed as far as this meeting is concerned. And in that context, only this meeting was very much significant as far as Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Mr. Mark Esper, and, of course, Mr. Michael Pompeo is concerned. Munmun?
Arun, we are aware that the last of the foundational military agreements between India and the United States, that is BECA, has also been signed. Would you say that, such decisions only take place when there is strategic guidance from the top, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as well as on the US side, US President Donald Trump, have been giving strategic guidance to this relationship? Because compare this to the UPA years, and none of the foundational agreements were signed. In 2016, India becomes a major defense partner of the United States, taking it to the same level as its closest allies and partners. Then LEMO and COMCASA being signed, and now BECA being signed to strengthen military-to-military cooperation.
That's right. So when top leadership is working hard to take the relationship forward, it gets reflected in the bilateral relationship as well. From LEMOA to COMCASA and, of course, now the BECA. This BECA will be a game changer. And as the Indian government has clearly said that BECA has been very much significant. It will be a game changer as far as India-US relationship is concerned, and of course as far as defense is concerned. Now BECA, US primarily signs the BECA with the close aids or the close countries primarily, and this gives a sense that the India and US relationship are all set to grow much more ahead what it is as of now. An important aspect is also that that BECA will give a complete edge as far as navigation is concerned, nautical and aeronautical coordinates are concerned. So in all these aspects, BECA will give complete edge to India as well, and of course to US as well in this Asian region. And India will of course benefit from signing of BECA as far as its defense capabilities are concerned, defense infrastructure is concerned, as far as nautical and aeronautical, the coordinates are concerned. So in all that aspects, BECA is going to be a game changer as of now. And in that context, when we talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump's chemistry, that has also played an important role in signing such a significant deal of BECA. We have seen that recently on 24th and 25th of February, when US President Donald Trump was on India's visit. At that time, the focus area was also energy sector and of course the defense sector. And that all the agreements primarily at various levels, at the secretary level, they were negotiated from a long time. And today we are seeing that BECA is finally becoming a reality as far as India-US relationship is concerned. So top leadership, right from Prime Minister Narendra Modi to US President Donald Trump, this is very much significant. And as Dr. Jaishankar also mentioned, that the negotiations were held as far as BECA is concerned, and that's the reason why BECA today is becoming a reality as far as India and US is concerned. It will give a complete edge to India as far as defense capabilities are concerned. And of course, when we talk about the big market of becoming a supply chain, or primarily the global supply chain, India is projecting itself to be a big market of supply chains, not only in defense sector, but also in various other sectors to the entire world as of now. Munmun?
Absolutely, Arun. Stay with us. So let's go back to Dr. Harsh Pant. Dr. Pant, a significant milestone has been reached today with the signing of BECA. Both sides, India as well as the US, see it like that. What is the kind of edge that this is going to provide with geospatial intelligence to be shared now from the US to India going forward in the current context that we are living in regionally and globally?
Well, Munmun, in this day and age, the contemporary warfare is based on information. Information is the new oil. And therefore, if India starts engaging with its partners where it can share information, it can get sensitive information about critical, assets around the region and in its own periphery, that makes India, that is a force multiplier for India, for Indian forces. And for America to sign this deal with India also underscores, in America's eyes, India's role as a key interlocutor in the region, as a key partner in the region. Again, a relationship that America shares with very few countries, with its closest allies. So in that sense, India, without being a military alliance partner of the US, is now part of these foundational agreements which allow India larger footprint in the region, larger global and regional footprint, as well as an ability to constrain the options of its adversaries. Now, again, when you look at China, when you look at China's role in the Indian Ocean, when you look at China's role in the Himalayas, we need the kind of geospatial intelligence, that geospatial information that would be available to Indian forces would be quite critical in fighting the kind of wars, perhaps, if they are needed, and to restore confidence in our own deterrence ability. So I think this is a landmark achievement, an achievement that somehow wraps the 4 foundational agreements with the US and therefore shapes India as a very important partner for America in the Indo-Pacific, and for India as in America, it has found an important partner that allows it to leverage those capabilities towards stabilizing the larger Indian Ocean periphery.
There is also a cooperation that is expected to be bolstered when it comes to defense production as well as defense trade. We are aware that there is the DTTI initiative which is already underway, and there Rajnath Singh said that some projects have been identified that will be taken up on priority under this, and India is also projecting itself as a market where production capabilities can be shifted and supply global chains can also be shifted. How do you see this cooperation going forward between India and the United States?
There is an important shift happening in the way India is looking at its own manufacturing capacity and how to build it, and how to integrate better with global supply chains at a time when global supply chains are moving out of China and trying to find new avenues. So clearly India wants to be a nodal player in that restructuring of global supply chains, and therefore India's Make in India initiative is a very important initiative to attract a lot of these companies, make it possible for them to invest in India, produce in India, and market from India. So I think what is going to increasingly India, along with other like-minded countries, and in particular with America in the defense sector. America has great advantages in the defense sector. American industry is at the cutting edge, and all the countries, all major powers in the world vie for that market, vie for that pie of the cake. So in India's case, if America and India come together to co-develop, co-produce, as well as if American companies start investing, defense sector starts investing in India, I think it would not only give boost to India's manufacturing base, which India wants to expand, and it would also make India a critical nodal actor in the restructuring of global supply chains, but it also does something very significant. It allows India to think about leapfrogging into the next stage of technological evolution, which is something that India will have to do if the aspirations of the millions of Indians are to be satisfied. So I think there is a larger economic dimension, trade dimension in this defense engagement, which one need not miss, and which I think needs to be, will be increasingly become the focal center of the engagement that India would be sharing with the Americans in the coming days and weeks and months.
Dr. Pant, stay with us. Let's listen into what External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had to say on the issue of counterterrorism cooperation between India and the US.
Discussions also covered developments in our neighboring countries. We made clear that cross-border terrorism is completely unacceptable. On Afghanistan, India's stakes in its security and stability are evident, as is our willingness to contribute to international efforts to that end.
And Dr. Pant continues to be with us. Dr. Pant, we've seen the kind of highs in counterterrorism cooperation between India and the United States that we hadn't seen earlier. I mean, the last 4-5 years particularly have been quite historic and significant when it comes to that. And we also heard Dr. Jaishankar speak on the peace process in Afghanistan and how India is on board as far as that global effort is concerned. Your thoughts on the way India-US counterterrorism cooperation has progressed so far, and also on how India views the peace process in Afghanistan?
Counter-terrorism has been one area where many in India have often questioned American reliability in the past. And therefore, what we have seen in the last 4 to 5 years is a dramatic expansion in this domain, and one domain where there has been a lot of contestation around the fact that America is very close to Pakistan, that America and Pakistan have been traditional partners, and therefore can India rely on America to look when it looks at its western periphery. But increasingly what we have seen is that America and India have been on the same page. In fact, the advent of Trump administration and the last years of Obama administration heralded a new era in which America and India, perhaps for the first time, were looking at South Asia through a similar prism when it came to counter-terrorism, which had never happened before. So I think Trump administration has really escalated that move, and we are at a position today where intelligence sharing has become the norm rather than the exception. And I think that's a very important development which needs to be underscored, which needs to be celebrated, and perhaps which will be taken forward as India develop greater institutional mechanisms. Let us also remember that BECA and COMCASA both also have an underlying intelligence imprint in them. So therefore, intelligence cooperation with regard to counter-terror is only going to expand in the coming years, and given the convergence that the two countries share, this is going to be a very, very crucial area, which is also related to Afghanistan question, where there have been many questions in India about what Americans are doing in Afghanistan, whether India can rely on America, whether India would need to do it, will have to plow its own, lonely path in Afghanistan. And I think all those questions more or less have become redundant given the close cooperation we are seeing between Indians and the Americans at the moment. Everything that America is doing in Afghanistan is closely shared with India, and India is on board with most of the aspects of those of what America is doing. There are certainly differences in the way perhaps the Taliban is being integrated, but there is no difference on the larger question that peace needs to come to Afghanistan sooner rather than later, and that Afghan state institutions need to be bolstered. So I think there America looks at India as a very, very critical player, and Afghanistan looks at India as a very, very critical player. So India can't be dismissed, and India looks at the American role in a very positive light compared to, say, a decade back when India and America were on two different sides of the equation. Today, India and America look at the sources of the problem in a very similar sense, and are also ready to accept some of the consequences that follow from that understanding. So I think we are looking at a relationship, even on the western periphery of India, which has been quite contentious in the past, to be much more productive going forward.
Fair enough. In fact, Rajnath Singh, a defense minister, also spoke about how India is inviting investment in the defense sector, where he spoke about how India can be a market where production capabilities in the defense sector can be shifted, and also global supply chains can be shifted, and how India has liberalized its defense regime for that purpose. Let's listen in.
I highlighted the capabilities of Indian defense industry and their usefulness in the supply chain of major US platforms and systems. We have identified priority near-term projects for joint development between respective agencies, which need to be fast-tracked under the Defense Trade and Technology Initiative, and resolved to work together in defense research and development more efficiently.
Our correspondent Arun Sharma continues to be with us. Arun, we heard Rajnath Singh speak about how priority projects have been identified under the DTTI between India and the United States. Is this going to go from strength to strength from here on?
That's right, Munmu. And of course, Rajnath Singh, the Raksha Mantri, also mentioned about the Atmanirbhar Bharat and defense sector as to how India is becoming a lucrative market. If you look at Mr. Mark Esper's speech, he has mentioned this line whereby he has mentioned the point that they have, noticed the kind of destabilizing act being done by China, be it India or be it Taiwan or be it other parts of this region. So yes, now the focus is that various companies, various countries are taking steps to move out of China, and of course looking for some other big markets. And India is providing that big market. And that's the reason why Raksha Mantri also mentioned about the point that now the focus is on increasing the capabilities and, of course, investing more in research and development as far as defense sector is concerned. Recently, we have seen that Defense Acquisition Council, has cleared various other acquisition for various other defense equipment. On the other side, India is also cutting down on imports going forward, and they are becoming Atmanirbhar. India on one side, when we talk about Uttar Pradesh, a mega defense corridor, is in the pipeline. So all in all, if you try to sum it up, the message is very much clear that India is all set to become a big defense market as well, whereby it's trying to become Atmanirbhar in defense sector, and a partnership between India and US. And when you talk about various agreements that have been signed, be it from defense sector or various other sectors, the focus is that how India is becoming Atmanirbhar. And now that does not mean that we are cutting off from various other global economies, but yes, how can India become the part of the global supply chain? How can the global supply chain, or primarily how can India play its role, which is resilient, and the relation is based on trust, and how can resilient infrastructure be created? How can infrastructure be created that is economic in nature? In that context, you know, Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh's statement as far as defense capabilities and enhancing the defense capabilities is very much significant, Munmun.
Absolutely. Stay with us, Arun. Let's listen in to what U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo as well as Defense Secretary Mark Esper had to say in the press statement.
Based on our shared values and common interests, we stand shoulder to shoulder in support of a free and open Indo-Pacific for all, particularly in light of increasing aggression and destabilizing activities by China.
So there you heard Mark Esper. Let's also listen in to Mike Pompeo, U.S. Secretary of State. Arun, we heard what Mark Esper had to say on the need for a free and open Indo-Pacific, and the US side could not have been more direct in its attack on China, with Mark Esper talking about destabilizing activities of China, and Mike Pompeo going to the extent of saying that the Chinese Communist Party is no friend of democracy. What does this signaling mean to you?
Well, the message is very much clear that today entire world is looking for a new market. Economies, relationships that are built on trust. That's the basic idea of any kind of relationship, be it a bilateral relationship or a multilateral relationship. In that context, this statement from, primarily the relationship between the world's largest democracy and oldest democracy coming together under one roof, signing various primarily signing various agreements ranging from defense to various other sectors, signifies that how India is looked upon as a trusted partner, because there are shared values when we talk about India and US. And of course, globally, India is becoming a favorite destination as well, not only for investment point of view, but as far as various other points are concerned between a relationship, as far as the bilateral relationship or the multilateral relationships are concerned. In that context, the statement from Mark Esper is really significant, as far as he's saying that they have noted that how China is trying to destabilize this entire region, and in that context, when various global companies and other countries are looking for various other economies as far as investment is concerned, India is looking as a favorite destination to various other global players. And in that context, the Atmanirbhar Bharat that was mentioned by Raksha Mantri various times during his press briefing in the 2+2 dialogue press statement, that yes, India is becoming Atmanirbhar Bharat under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And yes, that's the key aspect, that how India is trying to become a trusted partner as far as becoming a partner as far as, and of course also becoming part as far as the global supply chain are concerned. Munmun.
Thank you, Arun, for those inputs. Let's go back to Dr. Pant. Dr. Pant, are we seeing a more open acknowledgement of the concerns that various countries in the Indo-Pacific region and the US have with regard to activities of China, its expansionist and belligerent tendencies? Are we seeing that play out in the context of Quad as well? We are aware that India has invited Australia to the Malabar exercise next month, which was welcomed by the United States today.
I think, China's aggression, China's assertive foreign policy posture, China's complete disregard to global norms, China's disregard to, any form of multilateral, bilateral engagement, pushing a unilateral agenda on the region, on the world. I think all that has pushed the countries into making some choices, and the choices that India is making are pretty clear. That India will expand its engagement, enhance its engagement with like-minded countries in the region. It would build up its own capacities to manage China's rise. It would build up institutional capacity. It will build up also its relationships so that it becomes more, Indian defense forces become more interoperable with other forces of other like-minded countries, so that stability and a stable balance of power can come to Indo-Pacific. So therefore, whether it is about Malabar exercise, India inviting Australia, whether it is about enhancing defense and intelligence ties with America, whether it is about fashioning a larger regional quadrilateral landscape which may in the future also include other like-minded countries, India is making it very clear that India cannot be taken lying down, that India will stand up to Chinese aggression, and that other countries also are joining in this effort. That other countries who have in the past been more cautious about China, other countries that have been coy about China, are now looking at India and learning a lot from getting together and how to build coalitions. So this issue-based coalitions that are emerging around China's rise, around China's lack of regard for regional sensitivities, I think will be an important determinant of not only regional balance of power, but also how far and how fast China rises in global hierarchy, and India is playing a very important role in that context.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Pant, for putting into perspective for us the press statement that was released after the third edition of the annual 2+2 Ministerial Dialogue between India and the US. That's it then in this edition of Midday Prime. News and updates will continue on DD News and DD India. And do not forget to keep wearing your mask whenever you venture out. Be part of our Mask Up India campaign. Thanks for watching.